Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'll talk you through what it takes to design a car. Most of you might have seen our Tesla Model S based shooting brake conversion, and it has been in the media, it has been on our channel, on our website for a while. But what we haven't shared before yet is actual work, how we came to that design. You might have seen some of the sketches, some of the renderings, but there is a whole phase before we start taking our pen and paper, or in this case our Wacom, and actually start designing these cars. So today I'll talk you through what you see on the screen here, the actual design analysis of a Tesla Model S, but also the market, other cars, and I'll talk you through the why of it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and let's go. So one of the first things we've done for this project is actually benchmarking. So we didn't just benchmark cars. On the left hand side you'll see regular production cars from Audi A6 to Audi A7, BMW 6 Series, Mercedes CLS, Porsche, etc. We analyzed quite a few cars actually. And then on the right hand side you see a few examples of other coach built cars. Once the owner and initiator of this project told us he was interested in perhaps opening up this project of his for the rest of the world, we obviously weren't just designing one car for one person. We were designing a car for a bigger group of people, and that meant we had to analyze the bigger part of the market. So what we did is we analyzed cars and mainly side views. Let's have a look at what we see here. We've got a selection of station cars ranging from premium cars here with a green block on the left hand corner. And then we've got non-premium station cars like this Skoda here with a red block. So just a small group of the market, but large station cars nevertheless, large shooting brakes, advanced toolings, whatever the brand calls them. And this was an interesting analysis because we analyzed these cars on different topics, if you like. Let's start with the Audi. What you see here is different lines that are running over the bodywork. One of the first one is obviously the A-pillar here. So we analyzed the rake of the A-pillar. So basically how flat the windscreen is in the car, and not just that, we analyzed where it is ending up. So here you can see the axle of the front wheel is here, and the A-pillar is actually, and this is typical for an Audi, quite far in front of the vehicle. Well, why do we have these circles here? It's very common in car design to analyze cars depending on, let's say, the amount of wheels that go into the car. You can analyze the length, the height of a car. It's a great sort of measurement tool that helps you to look at a car. And what you see here with the Audi is that this part, so from the back of the front wheel to the shut line, is relatively small, and this is quite unique for a premium car. This is called the dash to axle ratio. So the dash is obviously the dashboard, which is over there, and then the axle is over there. Let me clean it up a bit for you. So the dash to axle ratio, and that length is very significant. It tells you something about basically the amount of money that was spent on developing the car. The bigger the overhang there, so in front of the front wheel, the bigger the overhang, usually the cheaper the car, and the bigger the element between, let's say, the front door shut line and the rear of the front wheel. So this part here, the bigger that is, the more premium the car is. So Audi in that sense is an interesting case, because you'll see if we go through to the BMW, for instance, that this element here between the shut line and the back of the front wheel is a lot bigger. And I can prove that to you again to just basically show you how much bigger that is at the BMW. If I just take that measurement over and I'll put it there, you see it basically either ends up halfway the front door, I'd almost like to say, or in the front wheel. So the BMWs have a very different proportion. Obviously, we couldn't change this for our Tesla if we wanted to. And if I take that premium space, if you like, of the BMW and show that to you on the Tesla here, you see that the Tesla actually doesn't do that bad. Well, why do we regard cars with that big premium space between the dashboard here and the axle there? Why do we like that? Why do we think that's beautiful? Well, it's basically in our collective conscience. You know, when cars started out, this space, and we're talking about cars sort of 100 years ago, this space was reserved for the engine. And the bigger that engine was, 4 cylinders, 6 cylinders, 8 cylinders, 10, 12, etc., the more space you had between the driver who was sitting there and the engine which was sitting there or even further forwards. And in our collective conscience, we sort of have this as the base of what a pretty car is. It's also called a cab rearwards in design. So cab, the cabin, and it's pushed towards the back, and you generate this large amount of space for the engine in front. Like I said, we couldn't change the actual dash to axle ratio, we couldn't change the positions of the wheels, the size of the wheels, but it is important to know where the rakes of the A pillar are on the windscreen, the B pillar in the middle of the car, C, and the D pillar, which is the rear window here, to know where they are relative to the wheels. So, what we have done analyzing all these cars is looking at what the competition does, and obviously this is not real competition, we will never make thousands or 100,000s of cars, but it is telling you something about what the market likes, the market of large station cars. And this Volvo here, this V90, is a very good example, because this was the first modern Volvo that actually broke with that super straight rear end that was so typical for basically every single Volvo since the Duet, the very first station car that Volvo made. And well, why did they break? It's not just because they wanted something new or just because they wanted to upset some people. It was because their analysis, and this is important, the analysis of the Volvo designers and the Volvo marketeers, it was very clear that the market wanted to have this fast rake, this fast rear end that leans forwards and makes the car more dynamic. So, what we did in the end, we analyzed all these cars, all their rakes, and the amount of sales these brands were making, and we put it into what one could call the sheet of extremes. Here we've got on the left hand side the E-Class, and this is interesting. So the Volvo V90 has a faster rake than the actual Mercedes, so there's more space, one could also say, in the back, in the boot of a Mercedes rather than a Volvo. So the other extreme here is obviously the Porsche. One could almost call this a hatchback, the Panamera Sport Turismo. Very, very fast rake indeed. Well, so what we've done here is you see the Mercedes rake here and the Porsche rake there, and basically this is the space we can work with. We took all this research from all these big OEMs. We obviously in such a small project don't have the time or the money to analyze the market for years. We took the work done by all these professionals and we said, well, this is actually the space we have to work with. We cannot go anything stiffer, we cannot put the rake up any stronger, any more straight, and we shouldn't go any faster than the Porsche, because you can basically see this is the original car already here, and it comes very, very close to what the Porsche is actually doing. So it's a beautiful way of knowing which space you have, analyzing the space you have to design a car around. But that's not everything, because then the next step comes, and that's analyzing the car. And we always do this, every single coach build car we make. We discuss this with the owner, but also obviously with the coach builder, very important. These people really know what they're talking about. And one of the first problems, you could call it, we had was this element here, which is outlined in red, because right underneath here is, and you can see that with the skateboard here, this very big strut. Very big. It's specifically comparing it to the front end. As you can see, it's a massive difference, and all this material here is hidden here behind the window. This looks like a window graphic, it is glass, and your eye reads this as the glass area, which in fact it is, but it is obviously not see-through. This element here is entirely metal, so only that here is basically glass. So this was one of the issues we had, and we had to design around, think around. So let's have a quick look at how that looks in what is called in the industry a body in white. So it's only the metal, or in this case the aluminium of the Tesla, the coachwork, the bodywork, without any rubbers, any glass, any material on it. And you can see that is that little piece of glass here basically, right? And this here is entirely metal, because that's where this massive strut is underneath. And if we zoom out, here you can see many other so-called hard points, elements we cannot change, we will not change in many designs. Even if we do, for instance, like or Vredestein homage, we do a complete rebody. Even then we reskin the car perhaps, like the facelift for a human being. We don't touch the actual bone structure, we do touch the skin, the surfacing of the car. And all the material you see here, basically all the crest structures, all the stuff that the Tesla engineers thought hard and long about, we didn't change. So what we did change is the elements there in the back. And let's have a look at that too. In a couple of other views, you'll see all these hard points here a bit better. So you see obviously the crest structures in the pillars, the crest structures here in the sill. In the Tesla's case, obviously the battery is in there. All elements we deliberately didn't change. Here again, these very big struts in the back, and how big they are compared to the ones in the front, which are comparable to basically a lot of regular cars. And we had to design around it. So, what does this bring us? It does bring us the following. Here again, this side view of the Tesla, and the red is the material. So here, this is the material we were planning to change, and here we've got obviously that massive strut and other elements that we couldn't change, so that's all that. And then here we've got the two rakes, the Porsche and the Mercedes. So having said that, that's not everything, because there are basically two ways of analyzing the car. Here you can see that this is red, so this is including the rear door and its glass. So this is the glass of the rear door, and in case of a Tesla, this is pillarless glass. Meaning that if we would change this, if we would decide to pull that glass up visually and lengthen the roofline, because obviously that's what's going to happen anyway, this is becoming a shooting brake, a station car type of vehicle, we have to push up that glass. Or do we? Because if we have to push up that glass, we have to re-engineer everything behind it. And you have to imagine, this is a car capable of doing crazy speeds, and it obviously has to be able to do all that kind of stuff. Windows opening and closing at high speeds, in rain, different weather circumstances, making the car expand or contract a little bit basically. And all these newly designed elements, the new glass, the new rubbers, the new roofline, all have to work together on OEM level. That's obviously quite a challenge. So what we said is we are making like a selection of different ways of tackling the problem of designing a shooting brake, a station car based on the Model S. This was the first one. So with this large amount of change there. And then the second one was here, where we actually left the window in the door and left the entire door OEM. And this obviously poses some enormous issues with regards to, for instance, the roofline. Because obviously the glass, if we keep that original, it's going to go down. And the actual new roofline, whatever we're going to do to it, is going to go up and backwards. So now suddenly we're creating this enormous amount of visual weight there. How we tackle that we'll leave for a new video, because there's a lot to discuss about that too. Different design propositions of our Tesla Model S based shooting brake conversion. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think of our videos and how we could improve, or tell you different things about our work.